know, probably not the best way. They do say you either live long enough to become a villain or you die a hero, and he certainly died a hero. Now, the crew, we wanted to bury him and give him a nice little funeral, but we've first got to do that is to get him back to London. And it was a 5-week-long voyage to London, yes. And of course, in that time, his corpse wasn't exactly going to look like Nelson anymore by the time we got there. He'd be rotting at our level. So, what we did is we threw him into a barrel of brandy. We were like, yeah, that'll do, the alcohol will preserve his body. And to be fair, it did. That said, on the 5-week-long trip, the crew got a little bit thirsty, and they started drinking out of the brandy that the Admiral was in, which is grim, isn't it? I know. But it was a little toast to the Admiral, that's what they said. But I mean, 5 weeks on a ship, ladies and gentlemen, what else can you do? So that's what they did. Now, this column went up in the 1840s. Nelson's funeral was in 1806 in January. There was over 200,000 people that came out to attend his funeral. It's the largest for a non-royal up until that point. And you'll notice at the very bottom of the column, there's some wonderful sculptures. There's depictions of the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805, but also there's these lines. Now, these lines are designed by a man called Edwin Landseer, who was Queen Victoria's favourite sculptor. And originally there were 4 lions, and there still are to this day, but the original lions were much smaller. Queen Victoria saw them and thought, no, I've got to have better lions than that, because they represent the 4 corners of the British Empire. Now, it should be said, Edwin Landseer had never actually seen a lion before he sculpted one, which wasn't very good. So what we did, at that time we basically ruled the world, and we happened to have some lions that we owned. So unfortunately we had a dead lion at the British Zoo, and we gave that to Edwin Landseer and said, look, you've got this corpse, do something with that. So by the time we finished sculpting the front of it, the back half had rotted. We probably should have put it in some alcohol like Nelson. But no, the back half had rotted, and so that meant he then didn't know what to do, because he didn't know what the back of the lion looked like. I don't know why he didn't just remember, but he wanted it to be exact. So he looked at his pet dog, and he thought, oh yeah, that'll do. No one's going to know. I mean, no one in Britain's seen a lion before, so how are they going to know? So what they did is they put half lion, half dog, and so look at the front of it, that's obviously a lion, but the back of it, those legs are sticking the wrong way round, and that's because it's more like a dog than a feline cat. Now, whether that is actually true, I'll let you to be the judge, but it's one of the great myths of London, and the reason is all because of just how those legs stick the wrong way for a lion. So there is some truth to the tale, but you know, I wouldn't rely on that one as a pub quiz. Now, in front of us here is a statue that marks the very centre of London town. This is King Charles I, and he is the king that got executed in 1649. Yes, he's the only monarch in British history to have ever been executed. In fact, he was the monarch on the throne during the English Civil War from 1642 all the way up until 1651. And this is all because Charles believed in the divine right of kings. That meant that whatever he wanted to do, God had told him he could do it. So when he got rid of Parliament for 11 long years, they obviously weren't very happy, the parliamentarians, including a certain Oliver Cromwell. And Oliver Cromwell was the man that replaced King Charles I. They had a big war, and eventually King Charles got his head cut off just outside on the left there, just Banqueting House. You can't see it just yet, but it is down that street where he got his head chopped off. And the man that replaced him, Oliver Cromwell, wasn't exactly any better. No, he became Lord Protector, which was basically king in anything but name. And he was pretty horrible to the Irish. But worst of all, he banned Christmas. And I mean, how outrageous is that, ladies and gentlemen, banning Christmas? So we obviously had to bring back the monarchy once he died. We did. And in 1666, we got the wonderful King Charles II, who came back to the throne in 1660. And he the king that brought back Parting, who was the son of King Charles I. Now, the problem is, as I said, in 1666, there were problems in Charles II's reign, including the Great Fire of London, in which 85% of the old London burnt to the ground, where an infamous fire that started off Pudding Lane and ended at Pie Corner. And you wonder why the Londoners believed gluttony was their sins. I mean, the food locations really aren't helping that theory there for the Great Fire of London. Now on the right hand side, look at that one big tree. That's known as the worst tree in all of London. It's the Norwegian Christmas tree. Now, I love the Norwegians, but it is quite a controversial tree. It comes every year from Norway. They give it to us because the King of Norway was exiled during World War II. He came here and broadcasted from London, and each year he gives us that as a gift, which is obviously just what we always wanted. And I think the tree itself looks lovely. The problem is, it's the lights. The lights, and so a lot of people in London, you'll see online, say they're really not happy with that tree. And I think if it was lit a bit there, we wouldn't have any problems with it. But there we are. Now on the right hand side, this is the Canadian Embassy, and you'll notice on the top it says Canada in big bold letters. And of course we've got a telephone box in front of that. Telephone boxes came from the 1920s when they were first designed, although that model there is from the 1930s. That's when we sort of standardised the model. And they've now just become portaloos where you go to the toilet, so don't ever use one. Especially not that one that everyone takes photos at in Westminster, because, oh my gosh, people are for a night out go and use the toilet in that one, so I wouldn't go to that one. Now, on the right hand side here is the wonderful man on a horse. We're going to see many of those today, but this man on a horse is King George III. Yes, the mad king that lost America. There he is on the right hand side. But maybe there's a tree in the way of him right now, which is a bit of a shame. But maybe that sums up his reign, to be fair, because he went a little bit mad, and he'd be quite mad about that tree being in the way. And that's because he was the longest monarch on the throne until Queen Victoria came along, and then of course the late Queen Elizabeth. But he's the longest king to ever reign in Britain, and he did see quite a lot of problems during his reign. Napoleon was around during his reign, and of course America was sadly lost. That said though, the height of the British Empire wasn't until the 1920s, so we don't tend to think about 1776 that much, because by the time that we were really succeeding, America was already independent, so we just don't learn anything about the American revolutions in schools. In fact, all we do in British schools is the Tudors, a tiny bit on the Victorians, and then suddenly it's World War II. We skip out quite a lot of our history, probably for good reason, but it's not good in terms of education. Now, on the right hand side, you'll notice these bikes are lined up here. These bikes are called Boris bikes in London. Now that name has become quite a controversial name in recent years since Boris Johnson became Prime Minister, but he was the Mayor of London when these bikes became popular. However, he was not the man that introduced them. That was the first Mayor, Ken Livingstone, and Boris takes the credit. But it should be said, a Ken Livingstone bike just doesn't sound as good, does it? So a Boris bike is the better branding and fair play. They're quite good, you can hire them out for a day. They're Santander bikes, really. And yeah, the only problem is I think you've got to have a card payment, you can't do cash, which it makes sense, but it's frustrating actually, because I always leave my card at home, which is let me pay for everything. Now Santa Claus is going to be here in a second, I really hope. I don't want to get you too excited, but when we turn this right hand corner, Santa Claus himself is always by this Christmas tree we're about to see. It's going to be very obvious if he is there or not, so do brace yourselves for that. But before that, not this building on the left, not the one that looks like Lapland, but the one just diagonally from that. There's a gold lady, a statue of a gold lady, just diagonally from us on the left. That is the Athenaeum Pub, which is a private members club of London. That's where the Duke of Wellington used to go and drink, and he used to get so drunk in there that by the time he became Prime Minister and he was old, he would literally ask for a little step, and unfortunately there's a coach in the way of this little step that he'd get on. But when you come and walk here during the day, go to the pavement over there's a little step just in the road. The step the Duke of Wellington requested to be put there so he could mount onto his horse. Now on the left there's a statue of a man up in the sky. That is the grand old Duke of York. He is the one who marched them up the hill and marched them all the way down again, and probably one of the better Duke of Yorks considering recent years. Now on the right hand side, of course, we've got Florence Nightingale and the Crimean War Memorial, and Santa is by that tree, ladies and gentlemen. So if you are on the right hand side especially, once we get past this tree, a photo of Santa is coming up. But first, let me tell you about Florence Nightingale, the lady with the lamp, the one on the left there. She basically invented the hospitals. Beforehand, they'd put all the dying men into one room and basically said, I hope you get better, but we'll see. Florence Nightingale came along, she came with a little lamp, and she checked on everyone, and when she came back to Britain after the Crimean War, she said, right, we're going to sterilise the hospitals, we're going to make sure that the walls are white, that everything's clean, we can see where the dirt is, we're going to make things operational. Well, thank God she did, because it ended up saving loads of lives. It's why we still have the NHS that we do today, with being so good. Now, of course, the Crimean War Memorial as well is all about the Lord Tennyson poem. There's a bit of a battle that went on. You might have heard of it called the Charge of the Light Brigade. That's where 600 horses went into Russian cannons. Onward, rode the 600 into the Valley of Death, rode the 600. Now, as you can imagine, cannons are pretty strong against horses. Yeah, nearly all the horses died, which was a real shame. And they were led by a man called Lord Cardigan, who was pretty appropriately named for this time of year, because it is anything. But he paid £3 million in today's money to be a British officer. He literally paid to be there. He had no experience, he just wanted it. And then he ended up leading that charge. Now, to be fair to him, he was in the charge, but then he was one of the only 2 people that survived. And he got a medal at the end of it. So, I don't know I'd give him a medal, but yeah, just on this Christmas tree, just to your right here, Santa is there, ladies and gentlemen. So do brace yourself. Hopefully he's not on the other side of the tree. No, he's there. No, he's there. Look, there we are. Give Santa away, everybody. There we go. I think Santa's sick of seeing me. I say the same thing every day, 3 times a day. But there we are. Now we're currently coming up to Regent Street. In fact, we're on Regent Street, but this isn't the best bit of Regent Street. We will see that in a minute. But the lights on Regent Street have been angels ever since the 1950s. The very first angels went up in London, and indeed the very first Christmas lights of London went up in the 1880s. So they're really on it. I think we saw Edison and we saw Tesla and electricity, but yeah, we'll have a little bit of that in a minute. Thank God we did, because there were these splendid lights, and apparently there are over 300,000 individual light bulbs on each of these lights that you see, not on each of them, not all of them. Well, to be fair, look how many there are. I mean, it could as well be each of them. Although 300,000 is quite a big number. No, it's on all the lights that we're going to see through Regent Street. Still doesn't seem like a big enough number. There's just so many on this one alone. Now, you'll see, of course, the famous red buses of the London town. They've been red buses ever since the early 1910s. Before that, they were multicoloured buses. And people just thought to themselves, well, we don't need multicoloured buses. Let's put them all red, easier, save money on the paint. And now we just have numbered buses. And this very bus that we're on is one of the original 19 buses. This is from the 1960s. Obviously back then it wasn't an open top bus, sadly, but it did probably mean that they weren't as cold. That said, sadly we've got rid of these buses in recent years because, as you might have noticed, the accessibility is not great. The stairs are quite steep to come up. Well, in 2005 they got rid of all these buses. They blamed it on the emission zone, but I think it's more to do with accessibility. If it was really about emission, we wouldn't still have the 2 buses. For example, you can't get wheelchair users on very easily. So they got rid of them, we replaced them with a new route master. Oh look, here we are on the right hand side, everyone. You're probably wondering why we slowed down a little bit, Oliver. Well, the reason we've slowed down is because we're heading into a little bit of a circus. But this is no ordinary circus. No, there are no technical or there's no unicycles, but there are plenty of clowns. We are heading into the Piccadilly Circus, and Piccadilly Circus is a little bit like Times Square in New York. That said, if you have ever been to Times Square in New York, you are about to be disappointed. Because instead of the gazillion screens that we have across the buildings of Manhattan, instead you've just got one massive screen, which looks alright. Back in the 1960s they used to be loads of fluorescent lights advertised all around the buildings we see here. So I'm always a little bit disappointed when I see just a single screen. You'll notice Coca-Cola advertisers up there, they've been doing that ever since the 1950s. and they pay over £2 million a year to advertise that one. And there's some more angels. Now in a second we're going to see the most famous statue in all of London, which is on the right hand side. It's this angel there, that angel in front of the screen with this fountain there on the right hand side, that angel floating, that's the statue of Eros, the god of love, otherwise known as the Shaftesbury Memorial. And the Lord Shaftesbury was the one that brought in laws to stop children having to work up chimneys. Yeah, back in the Victorian time, so if you could hold a broomstick when you were 5, then they say, right, get up the chimney, get to work. So it was a bit grim. And now, kids just have to go to school. So I don't know what's worse, but that's for you to decide. And then of course on the left we've got Waterstones. Earlier we talked about the Greek Empire of London. And the man that rebuilt London was a man called Sir Christopher Wren. And Sir Christopher Wren was the man that not only built the monolith, but he also built St Paul's Cathedral. St Paul's Cathedral is the second one, not the first one. Now if you look to your left in a second, the Nazis redecorated this church for us during the Second World War. So look at the spire up there, on the left there, up there, that's a fiberglass spire. And that's because it got bombed, it got destroyed, and luckily someone remembered what it looked like, and then we could replace it. And that was Sir Christopher Wren's favourite church. He would come in there every Sunday, have a bit of a sing-song probably at the carol service at Christmas, and I think they do free carols come Christmas time as well, although admittedly in central London it's going to be so busy they probably make you book tickets for it, so a little bit less spontaneous than probably Sir Christopher Wren's time. Now ladies and gentlemen, please get your cameras ready because we're going to want a picture of this one. And this is Alton and Masons on our left hand side, so do brace yourself. I don't know how long we'll have this one, so get your foot as well as you can. It's all traffic lights upon it. So Alton and Masons is a shop where the king comes to shop, and it's known as being one of the posher stores of London. And unlike Harrods, you might have heard of Harrods. Harrods is where all the tourists go to pretend they're fancy, but Alton and Masons is one of the real posh people still go. That's what I'm told. My home posh first, but I'm not a home posh, so I've never been there. I'm fat food to live in. I can't go on the Lidl and TK Maxx. There you are. But he's basically the posh version of TK Maxx. He's got everything in there. And it started selling candles when it was first made in 1707. He was friends with Queen Anne, Mr. Alton Mason. And he had so many candles, he thought, right, what can I do with them all? I might as well sell them. So he did. And there we have it. Alton Mason's looking lovely. Now on the right hand side you've got the Burlington Arcade, this little arcade. This is a famous shopping mall in London, but a Victorian one. And what that means is they're quite narrow streets, and also there's men in there that wear top hats, and if you're whistling they get capes and top hats. They look like the number taker than the number net. Yeah, maybe that's a better than you're going to get with that sounding. But they look quite scary. They say if you're whistling, then they're going to have a go at you, because those are signs of pickpocketing. So they're very strict. Now on the left hand side, if you've ever heard the phrase, it's not quite the Ritz, then ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ritz Hotel. They're probably referring to the one in Paris, but I do hear the one in London's pretty good as well. And I better say these because we're from London, aren't we? And they do a lovely afternoon tea service in there, I'm told. But more importantly than that, during the blackout of London during the Second World War, when London turned all the lights off to make sure that the Germans didn't know we were in, so they'd miss London, well, the Ritz decided to black out the windows but carry on having parties. And fair play to them, you weren't much safer in the underground than you would have been in the Ritz. First, when the underground during the war, the underground stations, they were closed to the public. And then there was such a massive protest, people just ran in and said, I don't care what the government says, we're being bombed, we're going to run into the underground. Then the government finally opened them up, and you've got wonderful acts like George Formby, and many other entertainers that performed in the underground stations. But sadly, the London Underground, most of it until the 1950s, was built with cutting cover. And what this means is they literally dig up the street and they build it just directly underground. Now that means that if a bomb hits it, the roof's going to cave in and everyone's going to not have a good time. That's opposed to the new ones that have been built, which are called deep shelters and deep underground tube lines, like the Jubilee line. If you ever had to go up all the escalators in the Jubilee line, that one would be okay if it was World War II, because the bombs completely from there. Now on the left hand side there's the entrance to the Ritz. You'll see a little Christmas tree in a second. And if you look to your left now, those of you at the front, you'll see it there. Little entrance, the men in top hats standing outside. It's all very fancy now. Although it's not as fancy as it could be, because the other day there was some Extinction Rebellion protesters that went in there and threw a load of poo over the Christmas tree. So the joys are going on men's hand through there. It's always something new is going on. Now on the right hand side is a fast car shop. Yes. But I always say the thing is you could be in a Lotus car or you could be in the Windsor Hotel. Everyone travels at the same speed in London, especially if you get on onto the London bus. Just get the underground, frankly. You might as well be stationary in the Windsor Hotel. Like some of the chat that we've had this evening. Now, on the left hand side here, this is the wonderful Green Park. This is the only royal park in all of London town that has no flower beds, yes. And that's because Queen Charlotte, the wife of King Charles II, saw the king putting flowers in there for another woman. And she was so outraged by this, she said, right, if one can't have flowers, nobody can. So she got rid of them all. And fair play to her, although why she didn't think the king could just get flowers from somewhere else, I don't know. But that's pitiless for you, ladies and gentlemen. And talking of the king and queen, Buckingham Palace is just over that park, although admittedly, if you can see it, then you've got better eyes than I can. And if you want to know how the king is in Buckingham Palace, then you must look out for this. Flying above the palace will be a royal ensign. This is the royal flag, and it's got blue, it's got yellow, it's got a big sort of dragon looking thing on it. That's the royal ensign. Now, until Diana died, there used to be no flag flying at all. Because some people think, oh look, the Union Jack's up, or the Union flag. They go, oh look, that's up. The king must be here. But no, until Diana died, there'd be no flag at all. And then when Diana died, there were 6 long days of controversy because it looked like the Queen was saying a massive faux pas to Diana. Because the whole nation had put their flags at half-mast, but the Queen did not. The Queen just didn't bother flying a flag at all. Because it was tradition, ladies and gentlemen. They didn't look very good for the optics. Now Tony Blair, love him all over, this might be the one good thing he did, and he told the Queen, look, darling, but he probably didn't say that, he probably said, excuse me, Your Majesty, please just put the flag up for the sake of the monarchy. And it ended up saving us from the actual revolution. But there was a real hostility after Diana died, and of course there's a real sadness as well. Now on the left here, this is the Honour Command Memorial of the Second World War. Sadly a controversial one in recent years. It's had some graffiti on it, but it's an important one all the same. You'll notice the poppies currently still by it. And it's particularly important because the Blitz in some ways ended up saving Britain from being invaded. Yes, let me tell you why. So in 1941, the German Air Force is causing a bit of havoc. They want to invoke Operation Sea Lion, which is a naval invasion of Britain. And to do that, they needed air superiority. They needed to be the only planes in the sky. Now, they kept bombing our airfields over and over again. We could not get the Royal Air Force up into the sky to oppose them. And then one day, one of their bombs, accidentally, and it genuinely was an accident, fell on London town. Now, Churchill, our Prime Minister at the time, had a plan if this was to have happened. He said, right, if a bomb ever falls on London, then I shall bomb Berlin 100 times. So the very next day, we sent bombers over to Berlin, and we bombed Berlin. Now Goering, who was the chief of the German Nazi Air Force, the Luftwaffe, he replied, well, if a bomb ever falls on Berlin, I shall bomb London 1,000 times. So this pettiness caused the Blitz. But what that did is it allowed the RAF to rebuild, because the German Air Force, instead of bombing our airfields, ended up focusing on their cities. And so the RAF had time to rebuild, regrow, and fight them off once and for all. And then, of course, we had a lot of help from the Russians. There's a famous quote from Stalin, of course, where it said, Britain provided the time, America provided the money, and Russia provided the blood. And I think it sums up World War II pretty well. Now, on the right here is the Wellington Arch. And this is, of course, to commemorate the Duke of Wellington. Have you ever heard the ABBA song, Waterloo? Waterloo, I'm to fear the Waterloo. Yeah, that one. Well, there was Napoleon Bonaparte, who was a French general, a great French general to be fair to him, but obviously we can't say he was too great, because we've got to pretend we don't like him. So he was a small man with plans, and he set about invading the whole of Europe. He was very successful, actually. But eventually he got defeated in 1814, and we exiled him. We said, right, we'll never be seeing you again. Now, a year later, he escaped exile. He was put on an island, he came back, and he went to the French army, and he said, guys, remember me? We did pretty well, didn't we? Will you join me in my rise once again? And the French army said, yes, we will. Now, Arthur Wellesley, the Duke of Wellington, had an army in France. He had this army, and he was like, look, I need to work out how can we stop Napoleon from coming back. So he'd scouted this area, might have been in Belgium, and basically he said, right, this is going to be the Battle of Waterloo. I've been planning this for a year. I'm a defensive general. I'm going to stop Napoleon once and for all. But the problem is, they could only hold out so much because the time was limited, because Napoleon's army was stronger, and we were waiting for the Prussian army to arrive. And eventually, General Blücher, the Prussian armies did arrive, and we were eventually able to stop Napoleon as a joint force. And then this time, we exiled him so far away, there's no way you can escape. And he died in the 1820s. But it wasn't that bad of a punishment, really. He basically got to stay in an island, not quite as big as the Isle of Wight, but relatively a large island for what should have been a prison. But, you know, there we go. You're in Semi-Lucent, don't you? He seems to have got really well out of it. It's a shame about the poor French soldiers who didn't get a great fate either. But there we are. Now on the left-hand side, another one of the hotels, the Peninsula Hotel. And on the right-hand side, we've got the Artillery Memorial, the First World War. And talking of the Duke of Wellington, Arthur Wellesley was his name. He's the man that invented the Wellington boots. And he had size 4 feet, so he didn't have a very big Wellington boots. And there's actually a statue of him just on our right here. There's a man on a horse. You'll see him lurking amongst the trees there. Well, we'll see him a little bit closer in a second. But his horse was called Copenhagen, and it had a full military funeral. It was that bit of a horse. And you'll notice as well, the great, and you've probably seen it before, the soldiers of London have these great bear skins called the bears, old in Canada, used to be made out of real bear fur. Now I think we might have become a little bit more ethical, but you never really know. But we basically stole that outfit idea of having a wonderful bearskin hat from the French, yeah? We saw their wonderful hats and we thought, right, we've just beaten you at this battle, we're going to have a bit of those hats. And at the same time, we stole a gold eagle as well, and they still have that for 20 years today. So, this is pretty well that. Now, in front of us here, this is Apsley House. This is where the Duke of Wellington used to live. Sadly, it is part of English heritage today, which is a wonderful trust, but means you've got to pay for it, as opposed to many other things in London. It's one you'd actually have to pay if you were a tourist. Or a bit, I mean, I'm going to pay to go. Well, I don't, because I've got an English heritage membership card, so there we go. But it is lovely, and you'll notice the wonderful bars all up around it, and there used to be bars on the windows as well. And this is because when the Duke of Wellington was the Prime Minister in the early 19th century, he was not very popular. He was a staunch traditionalist, and there'd been a terrible, well, a very good movement, but a terrible massacre from the Chartists. And the Chartists were people who wanted this movement to be able to emancipate people, give more people the right to vote. Because back then it only used to be very, very rich men who could vote. And when they voted, they'd vote on a stage. They would tell everyone who they were going to vote for. And all men didn't get the vote until 1918. And all women didn't get the vote until 1928. In 1918, only women over 30 owned property. That said, the first ever female MP, I think was in 1919. It was a wonderful lady called Nancy Alster. And she has this great exchange with Churchill where she says to Churchill, and this is in the 1930s, she says to Churchill, Churchill, if you were my husband, I would poison your drink. And Churchill replies, Nancy, if you were my wife, I would drink it. So a little bit of wicked wit from Winston there. Now, any Monopoly fans here? We're now on Park Lane, one of the most expensive areas, and this whole area to our right is Mayfair. And look at that blue hotel there, one going all the way up. That's the Hilton Hotel. There's rooms in there for over £4,000 a night. I don't know about you, I'm quite happy with the Travelodge. It must be quite nice. And even in there, when they're paying £4,000 a night, I'm told they still have to pay for the food in the little fridge. You know, every hotel's got a little fridge where they charge you when you leave if you eat the Kit Kat. Well, in there, apparently there's a Kit Kat of £8. So, yeah, I just wouldn't go in there. But if you got the money, why not, you know? Now they do say the only thing certain in London is expense, and they're not lying. But similarly, they say when a man is tired of London, he is tired of life. So put the two and two together and save your pennies. Now, interestingly with Monopoly as well, many people think it started in London town, and the first ever one was based in London, but it's not true. The very first one was in a city just south of New York. It's the closest city to New York, south of it. Sadly, my American geography knows only New York, Texas, and LA, and Washington. That's about it. So, forgive my American geography there, but a city just south of New York was the very first of the monopolies. Now, this on the left here, this is the wonderful Hyde Park. Hyde Park is brilliant when you're at summertime, and they do rowing boats. Now, rowing boats, what you're going to do is you're going to remember to save your energy, because you can row all the way out there, and then you're going to remember, oh my god, I've got to row back, and it's more exhausting than it looks. So do be careful. Similarly, on Christmas Day, they do swimming in there. There's a little pond, and they go swimming. But you've got to be part of the society to join it. There's a bunch of pretentious people. No, I'm sure they're lovely, but I mean, they say, oh, you've got to join the society 3 months in advance, because if you don't, you could die instantly on Christmas Day, which would be a shame, wouldn't it? And maybe it's true, it probably is true, but I think it makes them sound a little bit tougher than it probably really is. But then again, fair play to them. I don't want to be thrown into the fun of Christmas Day, so I'm sure they're having a lovely time. Personally, I'm going to be opening my wonderful Christmas stocking, and that will do much better. Now, in front of us here is the Dorchester Hotel, now one of the great 1950s classic hotels of London town. And I must tell you about what's on our left. On our left here, this is Winter Wonderland. And Winter Wonderland, I have a vendetta against, because 5 years ago it used to be free to go in there, and lockdown happened, and now they go, right, you can pay, and they pay between £5 to £7 entry. That's just to get inside. Some of the rides in there are £18 per person when I last checked, like the sky chairs that you can see flying right now on the left. Well, what I want to do is save money, so let me tell you this. If you go really early in the morning when it opens, you might still be able to get it for free if it's not a peak day. Similarly, if you spend £25 on attractions and amusements, then you won't have to pay the entry fee if you book online. And then you have wasted £25 on attractions and amusements. So it's up to you what you do with your money. I know where I won't be spending it. But do have a look at the looping roller coaster there. That is the world's only travelling looping roller coaster. Yes, it's pretty scary stuff. It's been to Germany, it's been to France, and here it is every year at Winter Wonderland. And it does look exciting. I would say if it was summertime. I mean, I appreciate the whole point of Winter Wonderland is it's not summer. But if you do get a chance, go to Fort Park. It's just around the corner to London. It's about an hour away, if that, on the train, and you can spend £20 for the whole day, let alone a ride. We will be in there. But you can notice the queue there, and just think to yourself, thank God I'm not in that queue. But there are various queues around the Winter Wonderland from what I remember, so it's not too bad. It is, you've got to do it at least once. It's Christmas, isn't it? And it is lovely if you go in the morning. Just Saturday night it can be a bit stressful, isn't it? Now, we're coming up on our very left in a second, the Speaker's Corner. Speaker's Corner is, of course, maybe an infamous spot of London. It's where people from all political persuasions and religious ideas come to debate ideas. But, well, lots of people say now it's just religious preachers. But even in George Orwell's time, the man that wrote 1984, even when he was speaking there in the 1930s, he would say, oh, it's just preachers. So it hasn't really changed that much. They might have changed what religion they're talking about, but they haven't really changed the concept of God. Now on the right hand here is the wonderful war memorial to the horses. There was over 1 million horses killed in World War I. And we wear purple poppies during Armistice Day, and we remember those horses. They didn't get a choice, the poor horses. They didn't get to choose whether they were going to fight or not. So that's where we're here. Now, if you're wondering why did Speaker's Corner become popular, on the left-hand side used to be Tiger and Train, where 24 people could be hanged at one time. And people would take a beluga all the way here. And, right, so Oliver, this is not very Christmassy, is it? Well, on Christmas Eve in the 18th century, there was a man called John Smith who was hanged there for 15 minutes on Tyburn Tree. And the crowd, after 15 minutes, said, look guys, he's still alive, let's cut him down. He's had enough. And we did just that, we cut him down. And he got up, and you think by that point John Smith would have learned maybe I won't commit any more crimes. But I think he just thought he was immortal, because he went on to commit even more crimes. And we couldn't catch him, and he fled to America. So fair play to him. Next time we'll just send him to Australia. That seems to do the job normally. Now on the front of us here, the day front of us, is used to be London's worst ever tourist attraction. It's called the London Mound, and it was so infamous we had to remove it. And it was an artificial hill, and they would charge you about tenner to walk up it. And frankly, they might as well charge you a tenner to get back down. It was awful. It was here only 2 years ago, if that. It was just here. And thank God it's gone. Now, on the right-hand side, in King George III's time, this used to be in front of Buckingham Palace. And indeed, Queen Victoria used to have it in front of her wonderful Buckingham Palace. She was the first ever monarch to move in and make it a permanent home, although it was brought in King George III's time. But just here, this is unfortunately too small for the Queen Victoria's carriage. That's what she said. That's why it had to be moved all the way out here. If you look at the gates in a second, look at the gates and you'll see whether you think it's too small for the Queen Victoria's carriage. Because I'm looking at it and thinking, God, how big is your carriage? Because that's quite a large gap. But there we are. Now this used to also be used as a police station to the 1950s. Well, police observatory platform, and there's 3 rooms inside. Why they don't turn it into a museum, I don't know. Sadly, it's probably a funding issue. It's such a shame. A lot of the museums in London, during the 1980s, you had to pay for it. Because a certain Prime Minister believed in privatisation to such an extent it got rid of culture, and there was no such thing as society back then, as quoted. But then 2002 came along, and to be fair, all the museums and galleries, a lot of them in London are free, taxpayer funded. And I was listening to Liz Truss the other day, controversial figure, and she was saying that by taxpayer funded museums, it basically funds your day out, like her payments fund her day out. But frankly, you can't really have a society if you don't know the history, can you? So it kind of annoyed me when she said that, because how can someone who's as good citizen as her say we can't go and see museums? Because some people aren't going to have the money to go to them, so they will never go. Now, on the right hand side, sometimes tourists say to me, oh, there isn't worth me coming down up to the street. And I say, a lot of the time, you've got a lot of the same shops at home. But have you got, ladies and gentlemen, the great British institution that is Primark? So right there, they're currently selling Bingo slippers. I mean, I don't know what more you can walk for Christmas, but that is what I call a bargain and a half. Bingo slippers for £5. I'm not paid to promote Primark, but we do it's got everything. I mean, you want a t-shirt, £1. I mean, to be fair, I get all my clothes from Vinted, so don't support fast fashion, ladies and gentlemen. But similarly, you can't ignore the good deals that you do get on Primark. This tailcoat, for example, makes me look really posh. It was only £6, so Vinted for you there. Now, just at the very end of Primark, there's Bill the Bear. Now, London is, of course, very famous for its bears. There's Paddington, which you all know of. Interestingly about Paddington, Jeremy Clarkson's mum was the person who knitted or designed the very first Paddington bear. And from that, they started getting trademarks and sold. So, fair play to Jeremy Clarkson's mum. But also, Winnie the Pooh originates from Selfridges. Yes, the man that wrote Winnie the Pooh brought a bear from Selfridges, and he gave it to his son Christopher, and from that he wrote stories about the bear, which became stories of Winnie the Pooh. Now Selfridges, you can not see it just yet, but it's that big purple building in front of us. Selfridges was created in 1909 by a man called Mr. Selfridge, fitting name choice there, and he was an American, and he liked capitalism, and he also liked a bit of Christmas. And he came up with the phrase, so many days to Christmas, so 10 days to Christmas, 20 days to Christmas, and in Selfridge's case, 147 days until Christmas. So, if you've ever seen Christmas stuff out for sale in July, then you can thank Mr. Selfridge for that, because he's the one responsible for it. On the left-hand side, you've got a Wizard and Spells as well, Harry Potter shop. Now, it's obviously, it's a nice one. What I will say about that is if you are a Harry Potter fan and not been to the Warner Bros. Studios, then obviously you need to go. But when I was 12, I'd seen footage of the Universal Studios Harry Potter and was so excited to walk through all around this shop and get my own wand. And then I went to Warner Brothers Studios and it was nothing like that, and they said, no, you're not allowed to touch anything, and it was so strict and horrible. So do brace yourself and know what you're getting in for. It's really amazing as an adult to go there, but if you're a younger person, just make sure you know what it's going to be, because there's no rides there. Apart from a scary massive spider, so it was arachnophobe, I was terrified, but there we go. Now on the left here we're going to get selvages, so ladies and gentlemen, please get the cameras ready. If we do get across this traffic lights, we might not, we might get held up with this one, but on the left hand side is going to be every Disney movie you could possibly imagine, as long as it happens to be within 8 Disney movies that are displayed on the left hand side. So once we get over this little bit of a crossing, there's going to be every Disney film, including 101 Dalmatians, which is of course one of the only Disney films actually set in London, and starring the wonderful Cruella de Vil, and there's Mary Poppins there as well, but I won't spoil them too much. Now if you want something on the right side of the bike, it might be a little bit harder to see, but that's okay, because look up to the sky as well, and you'll see Tinkerbell casting a spell across Selfridges. I think Selfridges must have some connection with Peter Pan. I need to go and find out what it is, but they've got so much Peter Pan around it, and there's clearly something going on there, so and they've got one of the clue, but there's even more Peter Pan. I almost listen to the small Peter Pan, but I'm going to record it. Okay, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. I would say on the count of 3 that we're probably going to be more than 3 seconds, so in your own head, you can count to as many seconds as it takes, but it's really worth it. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen, look to your left now, and here comes Selvages. The first one is a display of Peter Pan, so have a little look there at that. Peter Pan going past Big Ben there. Then we've got Lady in the Tramp having the wonderful spaghetti moment. Then we've got this one here with a Cheshire Cat and Mickey Mouse. There's my favourite, 101 Dalmatians. That one with the boobs is Mary Poppins. Then there's Winnie the Pooh there too. And then we've got everyone's favourite, Disney versus Books. And then we've got some more Disney versions. But do look up, there's a wonderful Tinkerbell casting the spell across all the Selvages, and there's the Peter Pan ship again. I really do love Peter Pan here. And look, there's Peter Pan again, in that one. And there's Pinocchio, but it's sadly not the best one from Shrek. Look, there's Snow White and Beauty and the Beast. And of course the final one, ladies and gentlemen, that we're going to see once we get past this lovely red bus, is Cinderella. And of course, Cinderella wanted to be taken to the ball in a wonderful carriage, and we ourselves are going to get taken to a ball, because if you look at the very end of Selvages, there is a Disney castle, ladies and gentlemen, up into the sky, so do brace yourselves to a picture of Disney castle up there. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here we go, Cinderella on our left, and the wonderful Disney castle just above us. And also you've got Bambi there in the window, but I wouldn't recommend watching Bambi at Christmas because you will be in tears. If you are going to watch Bambi, put on Watership Down as well, and then the snowman. You have the whole melancholy tradition. Don't do that video, it's really sad, that's what you do. Now, on the way here is HMV, which stands for His Master's Voice, opened by a man called Sir Edward Elgar. He's the man that composed Modern Circus 6 March number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And he's also the guy that made the graduation march in America. You know the one that goes, Land of Hope and Glory, Mother of the Free. That one, I won't sing it all because it's not karaoke now. But if you do that song at karaoke, good luck to you. But yes, so the graduation march. Now, if you look to your right, this HMV as well, not only was it opened in 1921, but also the Beatles had a tape, and this is the only HMV to produce music as well as buy it. And down there, just underground that HMV to the right, all the Beatles had a tape of their best tracks, and they were sending out, but no one had a tape player back then. And so Brian Epstein, the producer, said, right, let's go to HMV, let's press that tape into a record, and that's what they did. And only a year later, it was Beatles Mania, ladies and gentlemen. So we can thank God for that HMV there. And it's probably one of the last HMVs left in the country. Well, it's not, but it's soon to be. The High Street is dying apart from the street. In fact, in January, they're talking about pedestrianising this whole street to try and save it. So there won't be any cars or buses. So God knows how the tours are going to work next year. But who knows? Now on the right, there's some lovely chimney lights as well. And in front of John Lewis, to our left, there's doing some steel pan drummers. Now I can't promise they'll still be there, but an hour ago they were. So we'll have a look out for that. Sorry about that, guys. I'm so sorry. I didn't realise that sound. There we are. It's probably the microphone. We're all good. I just won't hold it at that position to cause that awful noise. Talking of awful noises, in comes the sweeper, which always reminds me of the 2005 film Robot, with the great big wheels, the evil street sweepers that would take you underground. So where it says John Lewis, which is just to the left of us now, there might be the steel pan drummers. I can't promise it because I don't know them personally, but they've been there all the other times, and they were lovely last time. So I really hope they're now there. I was not thinking that. They're disappointing everyone. But we'll have a little look, won't we? And it's interesting. These wonderful stars that we're seeing, sponsored by a charity called Starlight. All the money goes to a charity in need, and each star is sponsored. But they always scare me a little bit because they're sort of swinging. And I think, God, one day they're going to fall down, and I don't know how heavy those stars are. I mean, sure they're not heavy, but it's scary. Especially when they're swinging like being on a total wipeout or something. John Lewis has got a wonderful nutcracker, the ballet display as well, the soldiers, the soldiers. So we'll see them very shortly as well in their windows. I'm like, what side that is, but I'm just going to think through this rolling traffic. There's over 6,000 traffic lights in central London, and we're sure to stop at them all. It's going to fall London experience. So have a look now. Oh look, we've got Macarena flash mob. Maybe that's what everyone's slowed down for, everyone. Enjoy the Macarena there on the left hand side.
Forward, okay? If you're dancing, come forward. Don't dance and then go back. Yeah, everybody come forward, come forward, come forward. All the kids come to the front, okay? Yes, come forward, look at the gap, look, you can put the fish there.
So it's wonderful to see the ones down there. And people actually have to audition for spots in London. They want to perform. We only get the best stage, of course. And, but that's mainly Covent Garden to be fair, but it is a stress I hear for the street performers. You have to get really early in the queue as well. Now, coming up shortly on the right-hand side, I should say, the right-hand side, there's a golden post box. Yes, on the right-hand side, you'll see it not just yet, there's one that looks like, there is where the blue bus in front of us is now. I'll be very clear to point it out in a moment. Well, the golden post box commemorates Her Majesty's Diamond Jubilee of 2012, which is the same year that she jumped out of a helicopter, accompanied with James Bond. And if you've not seen the Queen video, then it should be noted that, okay, maybe the Queen didn't actually do the jumping out of the helicopter bit, but she obviously did star in it. And originally, they said, look, we want to make this film with James Bond, but I know the Queen probably won't be up for it because she's the Queen, she's got to do Queen stuff. So can we get Helen Mirren, who of course famously played the Queen in the film The Queen? And the Queen got word of this. I know there's a lot of Queen here. The Queen got word of this and she said no, one will do it herself. So she ended up starring in it, and thank God she did, because it really was one of the highlights, along with Mr. Bean playing the piano to Chariots of Fire. I remember meeting the director of Chariots of Fire in the House of Parliament once, because somehow I got in there at the Political Studies Association competition, and I'm pretty certain I was one of the only entries to that competition, because I submitted my entry several hours after the deadline, and then I emailed him, can I still submit mine? I said yes, and then I got into the House of Lords to give a speech. So I don't know exactly how many entries there were, but we've got to pretend it's better than it was, so I'll say I won. I didn't win, I came second, but oh well. And I met the director of Chariots of Fire, he really loved it, and ended up getting a picture of him, but I'd never actually seen Chariots of Fire other than the Mr. Bean clip. So I need to add that one to the watch list. But there on the right hand side, that is the golden post box of London town. You'll notice it there. There's several of those, some in Manchester, there might even be one in Brighton, where I'm from. But what is interesting to note as well, if you ever want to know what year a post box in London is from, then what you're going to do is you're going to go up to it and you're going to have a look at what are the initials. Now the initials are likely going to say in London VR, which stands for Queen Victoria. However, if you are outside of London, they're almost always going to say QE for Queen Elizabeth II. That said, King Charles III, the current king, has got his own postbox, which I think they just made as a nice touch, because who's using letters anymore? I mean, all we get is bills when we get letters, I think, so oh, she's good there. It's Christmas card season. People do use letters. But, I can't remember the last time I posted a letter. But yes, they did make one just especially for the king. But what's particularly interesting to look out for is the King George V ones. Those ones are quite good. And luckily there were no Edward VIII ones that I know of. Thank God for that. He was only king for a year and then he abdicated. But thank God he did. So you'll know, in front of the bus, the swinging stars again. They really do swing. The ones above us are okay. The wind doesn't really cause traction with them another. It's the ones in front of the theatre. Very scary stuff. Now, the other day, the Salvation Army was doing a little bit of caroling just outside their shop over there, just in front of us. Now, I can't promise they'll be here today, so don't get too excited. But you never know, and it's always quite fascinating because to me, I would associate the Salvation Army with just a charity shop. So when I saw there was a cafe, I was like, oh right, you can go in there. So that was something to do if you're in London. And it should be noted, all the shops in London on this street and around the corner of Regent Street, they all close at 9 PM, which means you've got plenty of time to do your Christmas shopping. But what I will say, ladies and gentlemen, is if you are going to do your shopping, do it in the morning, because oh my god, look, I mean you can see how busy it is already, and it is incredibly overwhelming. And also, you're probably going to get better deals if you shop online, which I know I shouldn't say because save the high street and all that, but let's be real, if the prices are more cheap at home and you get free delivery, then if it's not clothing, you're going to deliver, aren't you? I mean, clothing obviously is fair enough if you buy it at the shop, it's always great to try it on. And I've sent many things back on Vinted annoyingly. I think I can hear Judy Garland. Remember you got Judy Garland playing right now? I just watched The Wizard of Oz the other day, not for the first time obviously, but The Wizard of Oz, of course, incredible movie, and I recently found out that after the Wicked Witch, oh spoilers, after the Wicked Witch gets melted, if you haven't seen The Wizard of Oz from 1939, then, you know, I'm terribly sorry for the spoiler. But after she dies, there's meant to be a whole song and dance again of Ding Dong the Witch is Dead. And interestingly, MGM cut it out. They said they've either got to cut out the Wicked Witch is Dead song, or they've got to cut out Over the Rainbow. And of course the producer said no, Somewhere Over the Rainbow is going to become a cult classic. So sadly they got rid of the Ding Dong Witch is Dead song. And funny about that song in Britain is that when Margaret Thatcher died, who was the first female Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, who is loved by some, loathed by others, but regardless of your persuasion, I think it's still a funny story because she was, when she dies, there was a great controversy on her funeral because they were going to play Ding Dong the Witch is Dead from The Wizard of Oz. And not for it, not for it to say, well, some people certainly were playing it for it, but it just happened to be a coincidence that it was on. And the BBC was saying, look, we've got to be careful to play this song because we're going to offend people. They ended up getting it really high up in the charts, and it did end up playing from what I remember. So it is interesting how things work out like that. I don't remember, luckily for anything for the Queen, but the Queen was never as controversial, of course, because we don't elect the monarchs. Which is why the monarchy has lasted so long, and there's no political element. I mean, it is true that the Prime Minister meets with the monarch once a week to have a little discussion for about half an hour, and it's where the Prime Minister will give the affairs of the day. And so there probably is some royal persuasion in that. But it's not been since King Charles the first time that the kings could really make laws, and the last one was Queen Anne, who refused the royal assent. So a bill is voted through Parliament, and if the bill gets passed, then the Queen has to sign it off. And every monarch ever has done it, apart from Queen Anne. And we made sure to put a stop to that after Queen Anne. So there's not really any that totalitarian monarchy, as some people seem to think. And the King today, we don't really see him. I think he doesn't really have that much impact on people today. The only times we ever see the King is, of course, the trooping of the colour. And he goes around, does little events, he opens things. I think his job is just cutting ribbons. But to be fair, he's the leader of the Commonwealth. It's going to be interesting who will be the next leader of the Commonwealth, because it's actually, people don't know this, but it's an elected position. So this was King Charles because the Queen asked for it to be King Charles. That was like a parting request. But the next head of the Commonwealth is going to be elected. So if it's not Prince William, I'll be surprised, but in theory it'd be nice to make it more inclusive. Now we're about to turn the right onto the wonderful street that is Regent Street, ladies and gentlemen. Over 200 years old, this one, the buildings around it. And if you were to go all the way up here, you get to the BBC offices where they've got a statue of George Orwell just outside of it, which I always think is maybe a little bit ironic, given George Orwell wrote 1984 mainly about his time serving the BBC during World War II as the propaganda, as like a helper in what was going on there. So it's always an interesting one. We've also got IKEA in front of us. We just have an IKEA. I mean, that is the best date location there is. It's been all day now. They still won't be done with it. Now, the Prince Regent was the man that came up with this wonderful street. Now, he is King George III's son, who happened to be called King George IV. Yes, they were very original with these names. They were the Hanoverian monarchs, so they were German monarchs, and of course the monarchy is German, and their surname, they changed it during World War I, and this is because people didn't want to associate the monarchy with the wars. Now it's quite interesting to know this, that there is a monarch today. Well, they're not the monarch obviously, but a Jacobite monarch is still around. So the person who is the descendant of the Stuarts. And these are because basically what happened is we had a whole situation where we had to bring in a king from Holland, called William and Mary, and we ended up fighting a war with the Scottish, and this is why there can sometimes be some hostility between the Scottish and the English. It was the Jacobites. It was the last civil war in the United Kingdom. Although the only civil, it's interesting, there's the only civil war we call ourselves is the English Civil War, but actually there's been loads. There was the War of the Roses, the Jacobites. Some people might say Brexit a couple of years ago. And that one obviously not much violence, certainly against some. Now as well, you'll notice these wonderful bicycle carriages in London, and they do look very exciting. But this is a word of warning to all on board, and that is this. A couple of months ago, some of them, and this obviously isn't all of them, but some of them were exposed on BBC Panorama for charging people £10, and then by the end of their journey, it was going to be 80 quid. So if you do go on those little bicycle rides and look like having a really good time, just get a video of whatever price the guy says it is, because if not, then it could end in disaster and that would be very miserable. So I'm sure they're not all like that, but it's worth checking. And they're quite annoying drivers, it should be said. And the reason they annoy drivers is because they take up the same space that a car would do, of course, but they don't have any license. So literally there's no license. And it's outrageous, I think. And you can just go around with your bike. But fair play, it's a money-making scheme, it works, but it's obviously not very practical. Now, on the right-hand side, you'll see the black cabs of London town. Now, some people say, just get an Uber. And to be fair to them, I've never got in a black cab, unless my dad's paid for it, because they're just too expensive. That being said, the argument for the black cab is not only is it an iconic symbol of London, but secondly, it is this, and that is that all black cab drivers have to do a process called the knowledge. This means they have to study intensively all the streets of London for a couple of years. Then they do a test, and if they don't remember London from the back of their hand, by the end of the test, they fail, and they have to redo it. And what that means is that the black cab drivers can get you anywhere you want very, very quickly. They know all the routes of London without a sat-nav, so you don't have to sit in whilst the Ubers faffing about, trying to work out which way to go, doesn't know the area well. However, they are more expensive and sat-nav exists now, it doesn't go that long, does it? My solution would be sell all the black cabs to the Uber drivers, so we can still have the lovely iconic black cab, but we'll have the practicality of Uber. And there's not even an app for the black cabs, which is good in London because you can hail a cab, but you know, they can be a tricky one. Now on the right we've got the Apple store, of course not here in King George IV's time. Probably quite a recent one, that one. I always get confused in the Apple store because there's no tills. Just everyone suddenly works there, so I find it quite a stressful environment. But I know some people love it. Now on the middle of the street, for those on the left hand side wondering what all that commotion is, well there's an island in the middle of the road, and you've got lots of people standing near a speaker, and there's a ring light which keeps going round and round and round, and people do their own videos of it. Now what you'll see is it's a bit of a, well, people are enjoying it, they're having fun, but they're probably wasting a lot of money. Like, I don't think personally I would pay for it, and that's because we're going to have so many people in the background. Normally for a photo you want to make sure that it's just you in the photo. In fact there's so many people here you probably wouldn't even see it in the background at all. It is that busy. So what I'm recommending is coming maybe in the morning or coming late at night. I think the light's on at 11 o'clock, I'm not sure, but this is 11 o'clock. And talking about early mornings, that's the same way that they filmed 28 Days Later. Yes, you see 28 Days Later was a wonderful film, and they made London look deserted. And the reason they did that is because they wanted it to look like the zombies taking over. Why they did it was because they got really early on a summer's morning, and even if you looked at that, it was there in London. And they looked pretty well at making up the books, because the last time I did one of these tours, the lady came up to the after tour and said, oh by the way, I was the director on that. I said, no. So it is a small world. Now on the left here you're going to see a lovely little Tudor building, not this one here. This looks like shop window dummies in Doctor Who. Hopefully they don't come alive like the mannequins and the Esteem consciousness there. But we're going to see the Tudor building just as we go through. And these Tudor buildings, I believe, are not actually original Tudor. I mean, they might be, but it's hard to tell in London because, of course, 85% of London got destroyed during the Great Fire, which was after the Tudors, and the Victorians really liked building buildings that looked Tudor. So we will see very shortly, and then we're going to see a dinosaur. So on the left there is a lovely Tudor style pub. We're living in London now. I always notice the people in the carriages spend the whole time just on their phone. I find it so funny considering some of the prices for those carriages are about 25 quid for a 10-minute journey. I wouldn't be spending that time on my phone, but there we are. It's up to you how you want to spend your money. So, ladies and gentlemen, if anyone is a particular fan of Ice Age 3, the Dawn of the Dinosaurs, or just dinosaurs in general, to be fair, then where it says coach, just in front of the bus, so it's a little bit of a way. If you've got 20/20 vision, which turns out doesn't actually mean perfect vision, it just means average. But if you've got 20/20 vision, you'll see where it says coach, and there's going to be an immersive Tyrannosaurus Rex in the window. So I'll be very keen to call it out when we get a little bit closer. We'll hear the police in London all the time, and we can thank Robert Peel for that, for being the man that created the police force, and they became known as Peelers. And Robert Peel was also the man that created the Conservative Party, and modern conservatism, as we know. And the Conservative Party is the oldest and most successful political party in the world. That is probably until next year when they've gone for good. So we'll see what happens in the next election. So yes, I can make up the teeth already from the back of the bus of this dinosaur. It's just on the left of this window. So once we get past this little bit of traffic lights, we will see. So those of you at the front of the bus, you'll already be able to see the teeth in the window. Those of us in the back will wait a moment. So there we are, look to your left now, and here comes the dinosaur. And I've got to say, I know nothing about the shop coach or Soho sneakers, but what I can tell you is we're probably have more photos than ever because of that dinosaur. So whose idea it was, I've done brilliantly. The only downside is they haven't put Soho sneakers, like the name of it, next to the dinosaur. So we are missing a trick, because I've been past this on the bus many a time talking about the dinosaur, and only at this very moment have I seen the sign of what the shop's called. So there we are. Look to your left now, ladies and gentlemen, the dinosaur, there we are. The king of all the dinosaurs, in fact. And coming up in front of us here is the world's most famous toy shop. And this toy shop was bombed 5 times by the Nazis during World War II. They just really limited toys. And the king used to get his presents on here at Christmas time. The king would come in personally. Well, I don't think she did. I think she got the servants coming. She came in once to open it, a couple of times, but no. She got a servant, she might have well used it. And it's got 5 floors in there. There's a whole floor dedicated to Lego. There's a whole floor dedicated to Harry Potter. And in between, there's loads of Mr. Bean teddy bears. I mean, what more can you want than a Mr. Bean teddy? So that's all you've got to look forward to in there. Now, as well, all the staff in there are dressed up like heroes. So do look out for them as we go past it. You'll notice there's escalators inside as well. And on Saturdays, they normally dancing outside the shop, but I think this is probably one of the busiest Saturdays I've ever seen. So they might not be doing it inside the shop or outside today. What I will say is 2 weeks ago to this day, my sister and I finished work and we went to Hamleys, and I had probably the worst experience anyone could possibly have in Hamleys. We got stuck in the lift for a whopping 20 minutes. And not because the lift broke down, no. But just because the families decided to get in the lift and then go out the lift, and then in the lift and out the lift, and over again, until they couldn't make their mind up. And eventually we got to the point where we had to just say, look, guys, we need to go down. It's getting claustrophobic in here. I felt like Jimmy Collins in Big Brother. I'm claustrophobic, Darren. That was how I felt. So, yes, we finally got out, and we thought if we ever go Hamleys again, we would go in the morning. So don't go any other time in the morning. No, I mean, it's Christmas, isn't it? So do go in there, you'll have a nice time, but if you're like me and just find it quite stressful, too many people, then Hamleys might not be the place for you at this time of year. But do look in, you'll see the elves, they're probably by the Christmas tree in the middle one. There we are, the elves are there. I hope the elves are getting paid well, because every time I look into the elves, they've always got this wonderful radiant smile, and they look so happy to be there. And I just think that's fantastic. I need that job, because they're getting paid very, very well. And what was this? The Gangster Tours of London. That sounds like a cool one. This sounds like a bit of a Peaky Blinders one, up down the apples and pears and all that palaver. You know, the Cockneys of London. And talking about Cockneys, if you're in London for a sustained period of time, then you might make your way down on a Monday night, which is coming up very soon, to Mr. Fogg's Tavern. There's a certain man called Tom Cardinal, who does a wonderful Cockney sing-along every Monday from 7 till 9 o'clock. And they sing songs such as The Land of War, which is an old Cockney song. And the Cockneys were the people who used to live in Whitechapel. Most of them moved to Essex now, but there are still Cockneys about, and they wear these, you might have seen some of the clothes, they're black with buttons, white buttons, and they represent the Cockneys of London town. Each borough of London has their very own. Now, we're going to see some nice sledging in a moment. Well, by the way, guys, if you are cold, I can get you a blanket, only if you are cold. I don't know how good the blankets will be, but anyway, it's cold. We do have some. But yes, just to the right where they're selling Burberry, and Burberry's an interesting one because 20 years ago, they used to be seen as quite chabby to wear Burberry. For those of you who don't know what I mean by that, well, let's just say it was quite working class to wear Burberry. It looks alright, a bit tacky, but it's fine. But now, it's become really fashionable, and the upper rich classes all want to be seen wearing Burberry. That's why it's got a high street shop in London. So you look to your right there with a night summer, that's Burberry. And yeah, there's been whole essays written about that, about the change of the fashion. And, would you like a blanket, Chad? Just after these wonderful, we've got a wonderful, wonderful cyclist downstairs, so the carriage is just next to us. But yes, so we've got this wonderful scaffolding here on the left, but if you look to your right hand side, there's going to be a little, another Christmas lights. This one says, let your spirits fly away, but don't fly away too high, because it means you stay on the bus for safety reasons. So, It's interesting that, isn't it? Christmas is always quite a melancholic time of year. If somehow you have escaped watching the snowman, then it's a Boxing Day tradition. You have to watch the snowman. It's all about a boy that flies walking in the air until the sun comes up the next day. And you can imagine the ending. And maybe the second one, the snowman in the snow garden. And they were taking a new Buffalo then, so they're going to do it, the animated classic Starry Night. So on the left hand side there's some scavenging, but after the scavenging it's going to be a really lovely shopping arcade of London, which you might want to get a little photo of. There's even Paddington Bears featured. And on the right hand side you've got some pictures of Wallace and Gromit, who are the staples of Britain. The great Yorkshire inventor, and I would do a Yorkshire impression, but as my ex-girlfriend, who I'm still great friends with now, said my impression was awful. So I dare not, although I might offend people on board. But Wallace and Gromit, of course, they went to the moon. Everyone knows the moon is, of course, made of cheese, and that's where they flew to. And they come back each year. Well, they certainly do on iPlayer. We haven't had a new one since last year. Which, to be fair, is pretty good going. Because I was saying this tour last year, we haven't had one ages ago. So yes, on your left here, the wonderful arcade of London town. There we are on the left. Lovely big Christmas lights there. You're very nice. It's not like that. Almost. There's mini bells, sleigh bells. But that's a little bit of Thursday for a moment. Now here we are once more in the circus, that is Piccadilly Circus, and as I said before, no unicycles but plenty of clowns. Though actually I can hear bells ringing, that sounded like a unicycle. I think it's one of those bike carriages again. And on the right there's the wonderful statue of Eros, once more, the most famous statue in London, according to my 1949 guide. Well, that's still the case. I'll let you to be the judge, but as I may or may not have said already on this tour, I think if they got rid of that statue today, I don't think any Londoners would be complaining, because it's only tourists who ever in the Piccadilly Circus. But they did get rid of it during World War II, and we're really cool for it to come back. We'll give them a wave down there. And we want to go to Titanic the musical on the right there. People in London waving at us there, we'll give them a wave back. It's always really nice. It's like playing like games Sweet or Sour. I used to play that over the school trip. If you wave at people outside and they wave back, and they were sweet. And they didn't get into Titanic sour. But there's Titanic the musical. And look on the right here, we've got some sort of performance up there, and I'll shut up and see what it is. What they might be doing, ladies and gentlemen, is doing a thing that most street performers do, which is they want to get the biggest crowd as they possibly can get. So what they'll do is they'll constantly say, in a minute, here comes the best thing, and they'll say it over and over again. I had people jumping on the bus there, but then I was like, I'll get sued. So don't jump on the bus. It is a bit of a nightmare, it's the joys of Christmas, but there we are. This is the one with the 1960 buses, there's no doors. And here we are. And if we're not a Monopoly fan, then we're making a right-hand turn now into Haymarket, because here comes another Monopoly location. And if you're wanting to meet your favourite British actor, maybe it's David Tennant, maybe it is Matt Smith, or maybe it's another British actor who's not been in Doctor Who, which frankly would be very hard to find one that's not been in Doctor Who. Well, let me tell you this. So, there's a culture of stage dooring in the UK. What that means is once the actors have finished their show, they'll go to the stage door and they'll greet their fans. Now, let's be real, they're not going to do it every time. They have just done a 3-hour-long show in the case of the band offer. They're not going to want to talk to everyone. So, what you're going to do is you're going to see the evening performance, maybe at about 5 o'clock, and then you're going to have dinner. You're going to come back for the 7 o'clock show, and instead of going to see the show, you're going to be the first one in the queue at the stage door. You might have to wait there for an hour, but you will be the first one and you will definitely get to meet them there. So it really depends who you want to meet. Or, cut out the middleman, don't go see the show whatsoever, and then just say, that was an amazing show. Because they're not going to know, are they? So, there's so many people in the audience, they're not going to know you didn't see it. I met Catherine Tate at what was considered the worst show in the West End, Haunting, the Enfield Haunting. I really loved it. Me and my sister really loved it, and we got to meet Catherine Tate at the end of it, which is amazing. And we didn't have to queue up extremely early, so sometimes you can get to the end, but it's a real race against time. Now, on the left-hand side, this is Othello, starring Toby Jones, who, of course, voiced Dobby, the house elf in Harry Potter. And on the right-hand side, this is His Majesty's Theatre, where they're showing the hands for the opera. And that's been going ever since the 1980s. And Andrew Lloyd Webber, who was the creator of Phantom of the Opera, is a little bit controversial because he's a member of the House of Lords. And he came all the way back from America on a private jet to vote for a law that was quite anti-worker. So we can all be grateful to Andrew Lloyd Webber there. Now there's George III once again. He's got a little hat there, he's got his nice tricorn hat. And the Canadian Embassy once again. And that means we're heading once more into Trafalgar Square. We're going to see the Norwegian Christmas Tree, which of course comes from Norway. It's a little bit lovely, but also if you've had a little bit of time in London, you might want to go to the National Gallery, which is the one all at the pretty far end, where there's a Christmas market. No promotion in London. Where there's a Christmas market just in front of. Well, let me tell you, Trafalgar Square's National Gallery houses one of the most brilliant paintings ever. That is of the Lady Jane Grey, just before it looked like she was going to be killed. Well, it didn't look like she was, but she was. She was queen for a whopping 9 days at age only 17. So you're a Game of Thrones fan, this is pretty harrowing stuff because she was queen for 9 days, and then Bloody Mary, Queen Mary the First came along, and she said, right, I want to be queen instead, and got rid of Lady Jane Grey's head. And Bloody Mary, you may have said into the mirror 3 times at 3 AM, and if you do, she said to appear. And similarly, she also burned over 200 Protestants at the stake during her 4-year reign, so she was pretty horrible. That said, Queen Elizabeth I burned over 300 Catholics during her reign. That said though, Elizabeth I's reign was about 60 years as opposed to 4. So, whether Elizabeth I should be called Bloody Elizabeth, sort of depends who you ask. Now, on the left of the statue of Charles Napier, he was involved with the anti-Chartist movement. I think maybe if more people knew who he was, his statue might not be here to this day. But considering some of the controversial statues in London, he's probably one of the less ones, so we'll keep his one. And you've also got London's smallest police station is in Trafalgar Square. Admittedly, it's not in use anymore. It's in the corner, the far right corner of Trafalgar Square. When you go around the corner up to the Strand, you'll see it's a tiny little sort of circular building where they could do a little bit of policing in there. And you know, back in the 1960s, there used to be TARDISes all over the street, and those were like home police boxes. And so that's why the TARDIS became a police box, because they were a common sight in London back then. But then I don't know what happened. I guess Doctor Who just made them too famous and we got rid of them. And look at those lions once again. Remember, as I said, half lion, half dog, those lions. So see what you think. I mean, it is a myth, but there is some truth to the tale. So yeah, there's the lamp is. You can see the smallest police station. We've got a big lamp is just over there, a circular one. And we're now going to make our way down Whitehall, which this man here, Charles I on the horse, the man who was executed, he had a similar path down here because he went down here and he was killed down here, executed. And a man called Samuel Pepys was in the audience, and Samuel Pepys buried cheese and wine during the Great Fire of London. And he wrote a great diary, and in that diary he wrote about the execution of Charles I, and he said that when his head was chopped off, loads of people ran up to his corpse and dipped their handkerchief in the blood, and they also cut locks of his hair. So yeah, it was really quite intense. Thank you, I'll be happy with a postcard for them. There you go. This silver cross was around in Charles I's time. That's how old that is. That is older than America, by the way, 400 years old. And just in front of us to the right is Horse Guards Parade Ground, where they do the Changing of the Guard from 11 to 4 o'clock. Interestingly, if you want to get your picture by 10 Downing Street, which is just down the road there, well, sadly, Margaret Thatcher put gates up in the 1980s. However, if you go to 10 Adam Street, 10 Adam Street is about a 5-minute walk from where the bus finishes. Then it looks almost exactly the same as 10 Downing Street. So then you can get your photo there and pretend you've gone to see Keir Starmer. Although why do you want to do that? I don't know, but if he's your favourite guy, then we live in a democracy, so good for you. Now, on the left we go, and we're about to see the Ministry of Magic, although admittedly I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, if you're probably not going to recognise it, because they actually brought in a telephone box just for this shoot as a prop. Now, Harry Ron and Hermione went round the store, and where this archway is, this is the Ministry of Magic entrance. But I appreciate it doesn't look very exciting if you don't know what that is from. Now, on the right here, this is the National Liberal Club. It's one of the private members club. Some people pay about 2,000 years they've never been there. And Winston Churchill got kicked out of it in the 1920s. And it was closed on Saturday. See, that would annoy me if I was a member. I'd be like, look, I'm paying £2. Now that bridge there is the only bridge ever been completed on time and under budget. And that's because it was built exclusively by women during World War II. And this is the Kit Kat Club, and they show the wonderful cabaret. And Alan Cummings has been there, and Eddie Redmayne, all the wonderful embassies playing the great show in its cabaret. But you might notice it's all starting to be a little bit familiar, and you'd be correct, because ladies and gentlemen, we have indeed reached the very end of the Christmas Lights tour. I do hope you've all enjoyed it. My name's been Oliver, so if you do leave any reviews, just think Oliver Twist. And if you do like to leave a tip at the end, that's the name between myself and the driver. And there's no pressure to do that. I'll get the door for you now. Not that there is one, but I'll make sure we're all good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Right.